Alright, that's all green, and everything looks good. So, welcome once again to another thing of D&D in Hindsight, where this week we will be going over Stormwrack, the last of these books. Uh, the third and final environment book for 3.5, uh, uh, which is not a formal name for them, I'm just throwing them into a series because of reasons. But it follows in the footsteps of Frostburn, and Sandstorm, Stormwrack deals with, well, all the watery thingies. But as far as introductions are, I'm Vincent,
I'm the Krampus.
I'm Hunter Green.
and I'm Vincent. Yeah. And continuing into this book.
Audio seems good.
Yep, cool. Right, so let's get into the Maelstrom. Because just as Frostborn used Frostfell for its catch-all term and Sandstorm used Waste, Stormwrack uses Maelstrom as the term for all of its types of liquid surface terrain, which it uses a lot more rarely than the other two did, Frostfell and Waste, because people are pretty familiar with, what a sea, a river, a shore, etc. are, so it also tends to use those. At least some
I have
consistency,
never heard
guess.
of these things in my life.
What is water?
Oh god, not water!
Hey, we played Enchanted Arms already.
But yeah, it basically covers everything from like mundane stuff like seas and oceans, rivers, etc., underground ground rivers, lakes and seas, sea caves, etc., to the more exotic stuff that's just outright extraplanar. The elemental plane of water, some various things, Stygia and the Nine Hells, etc. And this is the part where a savvy member of our audience who's seen the Frostburn and Sandstorm reviews would understandably predict my dislike of the overly rulesy parts of terrain books for the terrain itself, and in this instance you'd actually be wrong, in the sense that my complaints with this chapter lie somewhere else. But unlike the other terrain books, the hazard section here is going over things that can actually happen and is more helpful than not when with how to adjudicate these things within the rules of 3.5. It's not perfect, but by no means is it useless or bad. Just don't take anything as they must use rules. But yeah, like having like some relative ideas for here's how to deal with like going down depths or drowning or hypothermia, etc., etc. Not the worst things in the world when you're actually dealing with like a water campaign and somebody decides to do something stupid. On the other hand, the sinking and shipwreck rules here, they're not necessarily bad, but they honestly, if you're on a ship that's sinking, that seems more like a set piece events where the rules should kind of take backseat to some amount of narration. Having somewhat of a long list of suggestions like this is no means an awful thing even in this case, but at the same time, you should probably let narrative kind of trump rules in that particular instance. You might, like, in the middle of the ship sinking, we're going to go into combat and have like several rounds and you're trying to get to the lifeboats and X, Y, and Z, stuff like that. Not just like, here's mechanically what stuff happens and etc., etc. Also, D percentage minutes. That is some random. Also on this page, diseases, poisons, stuff in the other two books as well. Yeah. And supernatural dangers, which are more along the lines of things to mess with the party as planned. They really serve the purpose of plot barriers, sort of the same way that the other effects do in the Wastes and Frostfells. And marine wilderness terrain, and subterrain, and subterrain, which is kind of okay for stage building, but suffers a little from the standard overbuilding of the edition where every little thing has its own unique rules rather than adhering to a little more general ideas like, cover and difficult terrain. Like, for example, mudflat, this is difficult terrain, it costs 2 feet of water, reeds. This is also difficult terrain, but also affects your ability to tumble and also affects line of sight, and if you narrowed these down to a few key words, it would just make the thing much more like understandable and much more importantly rememberable as to how shit works. Like if every line is, if every type of cover kind of worked along the same lines, that would be a bit better. Like it's concealment within like 5 feet, and it's like total concealment 10 feet or more away or something like that. Just little things that make it easier to at least remember rules between X and Y and not, here's how reads work and nothing else works like this. Or silly things like that.
Yeah, it's kind of dumb.
Yeah. And here's where I start to criticize the chapter for being too simulationist to the point of stupidity. There's some...
That is a lot of tables there.
Yeah, it is. There's some ideas here to mine in this section, but if you're going to do this in depth on trying to sail a boat, you're getting closer to making a bad Grognard war game than a tabletop RPG, honestly. And yet, this is only the second worst part of this chapter.
Oh my.
8 fucking pages of naval combat rules.
Jesus. Like, okay. This is something I've thought of with the other 2 books, but it's especially apparent here. At some point, you have to allow the players to do their own lifting for a campaign. Like, I understand you want to give rules for everything, because there are those cave-dwelling grognards out there that demand that everything have a number, a stat, and a roll attached to it.
Yeah.
I get that. But for these kind of things, and for, like, treks across the desert from Sandstorm, and from, like,
well,
you know, going through the wastes, or not through the wastes, through, like, the icy tundra in Frostfell, you have to, as a DM, come up with something on your own. And, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I do agree with you that you do have to kind of come up with something on your own, and ultimately, a lot of this just boils down to, it takes X time to do Y, and a lot of this stuff is like, oh yeah, you need this type of preparations, or you're going to kind of get screwed through your pants. It's...
Like, I feel like these adventure books would be better suited, like, in all the things that come up with, here's how combat works in our extreme environment, here's how nature works in our extreme environment. Give them fluff and lore, but, like, unintentionally do not give numbers except for, like, creature stats or things like that. Like, encourage the player to come up with, okay, you're on 2 boats, or, like, you're on a boat and another boat pulls up to you and a bunch of pirates want to kill you with twin sabers or whatever.
Yeah.
How do you want to handle that? What does that look like to you? Is it just 2 big rectangles of squares for your players to do, and occasionally you do athletics checks to jump across? That's perfectly fine. If you build, like, this 3D sim, like, not like in a program or anything, but if you, like, design out, like, oh, people could go up into the rigging and do, like, Errol Flynn shit and stuff like that. You want to get fancy with it? That's fine too.
Yeah. And to some extent, that's pretty easy to adjudicate within even the rules of just 3.5, because, you know, they actually have skills for that. We'll also go over that later, but that's a different matter entirely. Also, getting back to the naval combat section, it's actually way more complex than it needs to be, simply because if you just boil the whole thing down, like most stuff, there's a bunch of skill checks. And then the faster boat basically decides whether or not your 2 boats are going to engage in combat. Like, if the faster boat is the one that's running away, then it's just going to get the fuck away. If the faster boat is the one that's chasing, then you're going to get next to each other, and then the rest of these rules actually kind of matter. But yeah, to go over an outline of them. First, you basically establish advantage, which decides it's whatever boat decides stuff second. Everything happens parallel, but the person with advantage decides stuff second, and they can basically, once they get in close, they can actually do things. Like, there's also a very large section that tells who needs to spend what standard actions when operating a ship. This is thankfully pretty ignorable as long as you actually have a fucking crew, but at the same time is using way too many words to, like, it takes up like an entire half of a page. Then you get to the actual chase part. Ships will start between... It's 2d6 plus 2 times 100 feet away, which is 400 to 1400 feet. So as far as spells are concerned, a long-range spell is 100 feet plus 10 per level in range. In other words, you're not starting close enough for spells to even do anything. And there are next to no range weapons where this is going to matter either, until you get, like, much closer. Especially when you take, like, the average and not, like, 400 feet. Beyond that, you determine speed for round. Ore vessels can go all the way up to the max speed immediately, and even sprint to like plus 50% speed for a little while. Sailing ships can only increase by 10 feet per round, but they go faster generally. There are also special maneuvers which let you gain advantage of the cost of speed, or you can escape a grapple. And so the main ones, grapple, ram, or shear the oars off the enemy vessel, can only be done when you have advantage. So basically, the guy who's if you're trying to board their ship, you want to have advantage. If you're trying to avoid being, so there's this little back and forth of trying to gain advantage, and once you're actually at that range is where, and this is thankfully more or less not the worst thing in the world when it comes to going back and forth on advantage. But man, is this way more rulesy than it really needs to be for like ship A engages with ship B.
Yeah, I mean, ship A is a character, ship B is a character. Everyone else gets their initiatives as well, but the boats are in the tracker, and characters can do things to make the boat work better. There you go.
Yeah. Actually, how this is best handled is the captains are both NPCs, and you just determine what the fuck happens from round to round.
Yeah.
And you,
Yep.
And
I
also,
mean, there's room for a little bit more nuance in there if like the players are the crew of the ship and you're like handling the rigging and stuff. But that's just basically like give it like even in 3. If we go back to 3.5 and use that framework, like give a bonus to a seamanship roll or whatever, a boat good roll.
Yeah,
for a guy doing the rigging good.
It's profession sailor, particularly for boats, because it's 3.5. Don't worry about too much. It's 3.5 has too many skills.
Heavy lifting when you're not.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, profession does a lot of heavy lifting for filling in for things that could probably have just been covered by other skills, but don't think about it too hard.
Yeah.
Too late. Ow, my head.
Yeah.
I'll use my profession doctor to fix that.
Now, once you actually get close enough, there's also you can start, casting spells and or whatever boat weaponry you have on the ship. You start using that on the other one as well. That's where the player characters can actually start doing things. And they deemed it, for some fucking reason, appropriate to go over practically every spell in the player's handbook and tell you how it would interact with a ship, rather than just leaving it to, normal, common fucking sense.
Jesus Christ, Jerry in the writing department is really justifying his paycheck.
Apparently. Especially since a lot of these are like, Scorching Ray, this does not start fires. Shatter can't damage vessel ship. It's just,
wait,
guys,
okay, hold on a second. Scorching Ray does not start fires?
Nope.
No.
Oh, we're off
Lightning
the
bolt can.
start then.
Yeah.
Like,
See,
I know I'm getting hung up on one spell out of probably 1,000 they're about to go into for this, but like, seriously, some character has the good idea of, I'll set a fire on this ship to distract them, and all I have is Scorching Ray, and he's like, I'm sorry, your ray of fire can't do the job. I'm like, nah, come on, man.
I would
see. I like that you're getting hung up on that. I'm more hung up of lightning bolt can.
Yes. Lightning bolt can, fireball can. I mean, lightning bolt.
Oh, I knew fireball can. I didn't know lightning bolt could set shit on fire.
It can't normally, but it can when you attack a ship with it.
Oh, okay, I guess, yeah.
Rude.
To be fair, I think that in that case, Scorching Ray should also be able to set a ship on fire.
I mean, yes, but for some reason, no. Yeah, I don't know the logic on that one either.
All right, hold on. I gotta look this up. Like, I'm irrationally invested in this. What is the name of this book?
Stormwrack.
Stormwrack, yeah.
If you want to look at the other half, I could just bring them up. It's only 2 pages of it. It's 2 pages of this 8 pages of combat. Nope. There we go.
Let's see.
They're like in the middle there. There we go. Okay, that works. Fireball can start fires. Firestorm does not start fires. Fire seeds, the acorn grenades can start fires. Flame arrow can start fires. I do not know why Scorching Ray can't start fires.
Why can't Flame Strike start fires?
Half of it is holy. Is the
No
best
other half
explanation
is
I can give.
flaming.
Yeah, I know. Gust of Wind, one of the few things I actually do want a description for.
And with Krampus on it. That's dumb.
Let's see.
These writers should feel dumb.
Yeah, unfortunately, the streaming is just shy of being able to make that out, unfortunately.
Oh, the perils of side streaming.
I found my own source for it.
Okay.
It's fine if you want to continue. I'm going to be mad about this for a while. Well, not mad.
No,
Just
we know what you mean.
disappointed.
Yeah, it's one of those things of, we're going to be in disbelief. You're going, why would they do this?
Yep. Yeah, beyond that on this page, 20 marine adventure ideas, because, you know, at least there's something. Let's see. Abelis seek to capture and dominate wizards in accordance with a diabolical scheme.
Wait, okay, hold on. I'm sorry.
Huh.
I gotta come back to this one. This is a physics nightmare. So, repel wood. A ship you are standing on is not affected, but any wooden vessel approaching within 60 feet of you is. So, a number of things come to mind at the same time for this one, but we're gonna kind of work through this as my brain works. Number one, aren't we in like an altered scale for battles on ships? So 50 feet or 60 feet is actually not a big amount.
I mean, generally, yeah, ships start about, again,
60 feet is ships are touching.
60 feet is very close to ships are touching, yeah.
Yeah.
Relatively.
So, secondly, okay, so the ship you're standing on is not affected. And I'm assuming that's by magic hand wavery. You know, Joe Quesada magic hand wavery, don't explain it. Realistically, what are you gonna do against an entire ship? Because a lot of these ships make specific mention of like, oh, you gotta be a strong enough wizard to cover the entire ship with your spell. Like, I can see it being used to ward off archers or like ballistas on ships, things like that, but and thirdly, the idea of the ship. Sorry, go ahead.
When it comes to repel wood, is basically saying that other ships can't come close to your ship, or will work against other ships trying to come close to your ship. From the looks of it.
Yeah, I'm going to guess there's some hand waving going on there, just so you don't have the funny thing of I repel wood. My ship and the other ship gets repelled 60 feet.
Yeah.
Ooh. And I broke him.
Okay, 60-foot line. Okay, so it's 60 feet from you specifically, not from the ship itself for repel wood.
Yes. Yes, which is even weirder because a ship of a certain size, you'd be like 30 feet from the railing, if not more.
Depends how big the ship is. If you're assuming something more modest, it would. You could also just walk closer to the railing in order to get the ship that's coming by you to be repelled.
Also, magic missile cannot damage objects on the ship. That's bullshit. Attack like the riggings or something to drop the sails on a ship.
Magic missile has never needed it to be a living target. It's a target.
Yeah,
that is really dumb.
They specify the spell cannot damage objects.
Damage objects are not damaged by the spell. No, actually, magic missile cannot damage dynamic objects.
Really?
Yeah,
Wow.
that is actually in the spell description.
Wow, that's right up there with the free parking money rule is not in the actual rules of Monopoly for blowing my fucking mind.
Yeah,
Yeah, no.
I'm kind
the
of surprised
group
on
I
that
was
one
in,
too.
That was what absolutely, yeah, that's a house rule. And I did not know it was a house rule.
As I said, everyone plays with house rules even when they don't know they're doing it.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, because you would assume magic missile would be able to damage an object, because why
It's
wouldn't
force.
it? Yeah, it's force. It's what force does well, is damage objects. The same with Sonic, really, but yeah.
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 I've learned today, and I did not want to.
Acid fog slows down a ship? Fucking shit. Okay, I gotta stop.
Yeah, I was
I
gonna
gotta
say.
stop. I'm gonna keep this here for the entire session, just screaming at this list. We're just gonna go back to Jim is really trying to justify his writing paycheck at Wizards of the Coast and move on.
A dark still lake in the jungle is said to hold tons of gold sacrificed to a strange lake god. I'm not sure what that has to do with this book, really, but sure.
Well, it's referencing, from what I remember,
body of water.
it's referencing the real-life thing.
Yeah.
It is referencing a place where a lot of dumbass Spaniards died trying to pull gold from a lake. I'm remembering the historical precedent correctly.
Yeah, that would be El Dorado Hombre, effectively.
Yeah. It's one of the things that led to the rumor of El Dorado.
Yeah. It was them not being satisfied with actually finding the rumor of the gold man. And going, no, there must be a city or something.
Yeah, exactly. Otherwise known as colonial Spaniards being stupid.
Yes.
Stupid,
So colonial
stupid,
Spaniards being
greedy,
colonial
and
Spaniards.
murderous, which is the worst combination.
All right, so moving on to Races of the Sea. Not to be confused with Chicken of the Sea.
Monkey. Look, sea monkeys.
Wow.
Firestorm, not start. I got move on. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Just wait for
We're
Shim
good.
to show up and start going over this stuff again.
We're good. We're fine.
No, we're not.
All right, so we're gonna start.
I moved away from the page.
Okay. All right, so starting with the races here is Aventi. They're fucking Atlanteans for everyone who wanted to play Aquaman as a kid. They're human-blooded with a swim speed, the ability to breathe underwater without the flaw of having to bathe regularly. So suck at hygiene.
Oh.
They also get +1 caster level of water spells, and well, that's it. I mean, I guess it's fine, but you could throw the bonus feat back on here and still be perfectly okay. Being able to operate in the water isn't a that big an advantage, except maybe in a pure sailing water whatever campaign. But even then, I'd expect a fair amount of land and ship-based stuff. Also, you can find ways to get a swim speed. There's tons of different fairly cheap magic items, class features, etc., etc. for it. It's not that big a deal when it comes to racial stuff.
Yeah.
Darfellan, on the other hand, these are actually kind of interesting. So they're now a rare race of hunter-gatherers brought to near extinction by the Sahuagin. You know, the shark-like race of D&D that everyone sort of, like, if you've interacted with D&D enough, you know what a Sahuagin is.
Yep.
Basically for when you need water baddies to kill. They are hairless with muscular builds and black and white patterns of orca, though occasionally one is born all black or white, at which point they go on a journey to gather monsters and special acorn balls and engage in dogfights. Or they're taken as omens of the child's importance or something important like that. They are a strong race with only a dex penalty and no level adjustment, as well as a good 40-foot swim speed, though they only have a 20-foot land speed, but that's not the end of the world. They can hold their breath for a long time and have a natural bite attack, as well as 20-foot Blind Sense in Water, +2 to attack and damage versus Swagan specifically. Their only other actual drawback besides the land speed is they don't actually naturally speak Common. This is actually a strong melee race, especially if water is going to be even a passing feature in the campaign, as a strength bonus plus a bite attack for no level adjustment is not a thing we've run into, and it's at least passably okay. And something different than just being human and gain a bonus feat. I'm actually surprised I found a race that was, mechanically something unique and interesting in this book of all sort of, other than it doesn't swim in water. And it takes very little, by the way. All it needed was a fucking bite attack and a strength bonus. Congratulations, you did something that actually has a mild amount of synergy. And also aquatic elves, which are elves that don't mind getting wet and built their homes in shallow waters near the coasts. They have a dex bonus at the cost of int, the aquatic subtype, which means that they have a swim speed and can breathe underwater, the latter of which is not explicitly listed in this entry. They're immune to sleep, have a bonus versus enchantment, have gills, so they can only survive out of water for their con score in hours, at which point they have to dunk their head in a bucket. They know how to trident, long spear, and net. They have better low light vision than normal elves, can see things good, and all the elf traits that aren't listed here or specifically replaced, which is, let's see, a land speed of 30 feet and medium size, which was certainly worth the space they saved not putting it here. I'm certainly not bitter having to go look it up in the goddamn player's handbook in order to make sure nothing was fucking missing. Seriously. It would have been 2 lines. They could have also saved me some time by just... They could have also saved themselves some space to put it there by just not having all this stuff that says X replaces Y. Also, if you want to be a race with a swim speed and don't want to be an orca person, I guess this one sort of works, but meh. May I say? Okay, Hadose, or that ape you saw earlier. They are often referred to as winged deck apes. They are human-sized with simian looking with glider flaps of skin between their arms and legs. You can sort of see here. They are a race of mostly sailors who live in communal homes in port towns. When young or not, when young or not out at sea on a ship. Anyways, that was me again. That was me stopping mid-sentence. Yeah, they often take on last names that reflect the ships they serve on and trust other Hodoge with the same ship names like family. Like, they give examples here, like, for example, like, if they're on the Dawn Warrior, they might take the name Dawn Warrior, or more interestingly, if they're on the Midnight Lady, they might take the name Midnight Child, the Dream of Night, Night Dream, etc. Stuff like that. Crunch-wise, they gain a dex bonus but lose lose charisma. Not a big deal. They have a glide speed of 40 feet with average maneuverability. Can climb and balance better. They're fine. Cerebral of glide speed being the most interesting thing here, but that isn't. But the most interesting thing there that isn't actually the fluffy bits. And you could have given them a climb speed. Really, I mean, it'd be fine. That's the only thing I actually complain about on this one. It's like it could just have a climb speed. Climb speeds aren't a big deal.
Imagine having a climb speed. Couldn't be me.
Yeah.
Well, okay, I can kind of see where they're coming from with this.
Huh.
Kind of. So I'm looking at the thing. They get a bonus to climb checks.
Yeah.
But there is a difference between having a climb speed and having a climb check. A spider gets a climb speed because if there's a sheer cliff wall with polished, smooth mirror surface, that spider can still climb it. But the person with just a climb speed is going to have a much harder time with it. So the logic I think they're following here is if there's something that you could naturally climb, like the rigging of a ship, then these guys are better at it because they get the +4 bonus to balance climb checks. But they can't say climb a sheer, smooth cliff face without some kind of handhold. It's not like magic climbing.
Yeah, they don't adhere to surfaces like a spider would. It is notable that like 3.5 climb speed is a little bit more. It does a little bit more than climb speed does in 5th edition, because 5th edition's climb speed is you move full speed when climbing. That's it.
Yep.
Yeah, 3.5's climb speed does come with extra stuff attached. Like you don't make checks to climb, you just do it. And even on surfaces that wouldn't make too much sense.
Got it.
But yeah, I do get that. But at the same time, it's like, okay, but it'd still be fine. I mean,
yeah, I can also play devil's advocate and just say, hey, give them a climb speed and then make it a, like, brackets when on like rigging or like sides of buildings or stuff.
Yeah.
And just say like, oh yeah, they can climb on things that are, climbable for your average species in the setting.
Yeah.
But they can't do like magical climbing upside down and adhering to surfaces like Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Yeah. Upside down generally I think takes something else as well. I'm not positive. I'd have to check.
Probably like an athletics or an acrobatics, something like that.
Tends to be something like that. Because I could justify them on like athletics yeah, I could justify them on a lot of surfaces with let's see if I can find this.
Honestly, if I was going to be a DM about it, I would probably say do either an athletics or an acrobatics, depending on what your character has, because I could see both ways getting you to where you wanted to go.
Yeah.
And that gives anybody who's trying this in the first place, who probably has either a good strength or a good dex, the ability to acrobatics around it, or just, pure strength of grip. I don't know, once again, spending too much time on the climbing thing.
It's okay. They made some interesting decisions that we don't agree with, but are also mechanically required to by how they've built their system. Though half those fire spells are not lighting shit on fire. Dumb. I think we all agree on that.
Yeah, for the most part, yeah. Let's see. Yeah, beyond this and moving slightly on, we get to the usual, like, nonsense for the other races with some minor sub-races here and there for when they want to get wet. Like, here's aquatic half-elves. It's slightly more aquatic stuff on half-elf, but nothing too interesting. And then we move on to the classes chapter. Which starts with mostly class stuff for being underwater, like bardic performance tends to be an issue when underwater, etc. Also, the water deities with exactly this much effort. Okay, so moving on.
Wow. Is that the least effort they've put into a deities thing?
Yeah, just about. What's even? There's not even prestige classes for them. So there's not like. If you want to read this just because, sure, I guess. But yeah, there's no prestige classes even based around them. If you need like an evil deity temple or the locals worship this particular deity type of thing, I guess is a list to pull from. But
well, here's the thing. This is a sub list of stuff. The first 3 or the first 2 are ones that they haven't decided to expand on at all. But something from Deep Sahelis on, most of those seem to be referenced from other books.
Yeah, which is the same. Yeah, which is the same with the other 2 books as well. A lot of deities for Sandstorm and Frostburn were deities from other books or from other settings, or occasionally the frost giant god from Norse mythology, or not god, but a big frost giant from Norse mythology. You get the point. Things like that. Yeah. And the prestige classes, starting with Knight of the Pearl. It's Martial Paladin adjacent class with, let's see, Lay on Hands, the ability to go back into Paladin, because apparently this has to be a class feature. The ability to swim in armor as the ability to, as a free action, convert turn attempts into +2/ and eventually 4d6 extra damage on the next successful hit while in water, or half as much out of water. The ability to use slashing weapons in water without penalty. More on that later. And the capstone ability that lets you spend a turn attempt to deal 46 damage to all evil and undead things in water within 30 feet, and heal all good things in the same water and range for 46, with no save on that. It's weird to say this, but this class is both well built and super narrow and specific. The using turn attempts as a resource is a good way to go, and it gets a good effects for it as well, and the effects are not limited to small amounts of specialized targets like, I don't know, Smite, One-Eyed, Half-Fey, Winter Wolves or something. But at the same time, the water stuff is too big a part of this class to ignore or consider just
it's Aquaman syndrome.
Yeah, basically.
It's Aquaman syndrome. Aquaman has cool adventures, but only in the water. And how many times is the Justice League going to be in the water?
Yeah. A lot when he's one of the major characters in the cartoon. But yeah.
Not even then. Aquaman's usually just, wandering around punching people with regular fists.
But yeah, overall, it could have used a couple more generic use features, kind of.
Yeah. That being said, really good template for transposing into other places. It's a good paladin class. If you just want a nice, simple, no frills paladin class, you just change a couple things around. So instead of water, it's Knights of the Dunes or something, or Knights of the Mountain.
Yeah, because basically, if you on Pearl's Blessing and Water's Blessing erased the water part, it's still be fine. It's not unbalanced. It's okay. Yeah. You can, as one feat, you can spend a turning attempt to get charisma and damage on all of your attacks. It's about the same amount or even more depending on what you're doing. Damage just to add charisma to everything, so it's it's on par with what you could be doing with a turn attempt. And Water's Blessing is obviously fine. You'd be level 10 before you even got it, so 46 auto damage is not a big deal. With some minor healing, with the same amount of healing thrown on. It's strong, but it also falls off because it just doesn't scale.
Right.
Yeah. The other stuff you'd have to figure out how to fill in. Obviously, Buoyant Armor and Pearl Blade are the swim underwater and use sword underwater is obviously kind of useless outside of that context, but yeah. But yeah, it is not a terrible template for a Paladin Prestige class. If you're making a Prestige class specifically for every single player because you've gone insane. But yeah, anyways, on to the next one. Legendary Captain. Okay, a leadership class almost certainly built by the person who made the first chapter of this book. So, it gets the Great Captain feat, which is over here, and you could read it in your free time if you really want to. It's not important. A growing bonus to its leadership score. Let's see. C combat stuff, C stuff, C stuff, C combat stuff. Plus class level to balance and climb checks, sometimes. C combat stuff, C combat stuff, C combat stuff. Once per day, mass cure light wounds that targets all aboard your ship with a cast time of 10 minutes. And a capstone of C combat stuff.
Well, it makes sense from a certain standpoint. If you have someone or if you've built this big advanced system, you will almost invariably need to make a class that is good at the system. Whether or not the system's good differentiates whether or not that class is going to be good. But,
yeah.
C for effort.
Kind of, sort of. Okay, so here's the actual big issue. You're the only one the person who is the legendary captain is going to be the only person in that group of players engaging in the sea combat because they're the captain. The rest of them are going to be doing nothing until the vessel at least gets close enough for it to fucking matter. And also, when you're not doing the sea combat stuff, what class features do you have again here? So in a solo campaign that is mostly the C combat rules, I guess this is a class, but it's the problem of basically they have very specific scenes where they are the star and no one else gets to do terribly much until certain things happen. And then the rest of the scenes, they are a subpar character that kind of doesn't have class abilities. So it's not really a win either if one of your character if you decide to like one of your characters is the captain and we're going to follow the C combat rules to the letter, and they decide to go to legendary captain because they want to be useless in all other situations.
It's a pretty severe exacerbation of the existing problem that exists with the rules for C combat as they are listed.
Yeah, it's also classically one of the prestige classes where they don't realize that no matter what class you are, you're going to at one point or another have to engage in combat. If you don't put combat features on one of these on the prestige class, they are going to basically feel useless during any combat, which tends to take up a decent chunk of campaign. Because D&D 3.5 and D&D in general really is to some extent built around combat. Leviathan Hunter. A melee class that specializes in fighting aberrations, animals, dragons, and magical beasts, which I will refer to as ABBA for no reason. They get a large bonus to identify and know the weakness of ABBA. The ability to make trophies from ABBA that they've helped kill, which grants them a +2/+4 to AC and saves versus specific species. Example, if you
the mental image of this is spectacular.
So, for example, if you make a trophy from a red dragon, that part works against all the red dragons, but won't work against all dragons. Let's see. They get a straight up +1d6/2d6 damage versus ABBA, and the clever wrestler feat, which just helps you get out of grapples against bigger things, basically. And Capstone and Cap also immunity to fear. Honestly, this class is a good melee class if your campaign revolves around something in the categories of aberrations, animals, dragons, and magical beasts. And even in a normal campaign, their specialties will occasionally make an appearance. But when they don't, you have, immunity to fear and this action grappling feat. Also, needing favorite enemy implies you could just do more ranger. If you were already doing this concept, so, that too. It's okay. And again, in a campaign where it's going to be good, it's going to be really good. Because it's actually a solid melee class. It's got a full attack bonus. It has just flat dice versus a somewhat broad category. And if most of the things you're fighting are aberrations, you're good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's see. Scarlet Corsair, or Crimson Corsair as I put in the notes. That's the same color. It's fine. It's within a few shades of each other.
Pirate brackets red. Got it.
Yeah. A roguelike class that's all about fainting in fear. It gains 3 sneak dice, and the same time a rogue will get 5.
Okay, hold on. That's all around fainting actions and causing fear?
Yes, these
Because
two
the way you said that sounds like it specializes in fainting and fear. Oh! Fall over like a goat.
Well,
Sorry, continue.
Yeah. So it gets the improved feint feat for free, which lets you feint as a move action instead of a standard action. The ability to feint is a free action that has a 2d4 round cooldown that eventually becomes a 1d4 round cooldown. +2 AC bonus on a ship, which increases to +4 eventually. AoE demoralize as an action with charisma modifier rounds as the duration instead of the normal one. And Frightening Lunge, which is the ability to, at level 9, which is the ability to lose 2d6 sneak attack damage to shaken the target with no save or duration. So, if you're trying to make a charisma martial work, there's at least something interesting here, as a demoralize with duration longer than a round, which is the normal duration for using the demoralize action, combines well with the Frightening Lunge ability, because fear effects stack, so 2 shakens will make it frightened, which means they're fully CC'd, they're just going to run away on their turn. That can be fairly useful. And demoralize itself is a skill check that you can kind of rig up, because it's 3/5, you can rig up skill checks. On the other hand, you're also going to want to rig up a bluff check if you're trying to use the fainting stuff, because it's a bluff check that's opposed by the... Making things too complicated is making things too complicated. That's entirely.
3.5, baby.
Yeah.
Except substitute often.
Yeah. And the fainting does actually kind of combine well with once you get to level 9 with Frightening Lunge, because the point of doing the feint is to do a sneak attack, so you can, since you're doing a sneak attack, you can shake in the target. I mean, the bigger issue is the free action feint is almost good, except the cooldown limits its use and removes the main reason why you'd want a free action feint, which is to be able to just do a full round and actually be able to feint on each of your attacks, rather than I can feint on one of my attacks and then the rest are just going to do baseline damage. It's perfectly fine and does have a good base attack bonus at least, which is something I didn't point out earlier, but that is actually kind of nice for a roguelike class. But may just be something worth like a 3-level dip in for the feat, sneak attack die, and Corsair's feint, so you can just occasionally do a free feint, I guess. Beyond that, it's fine. It is nice to actually have a class that does not, or it is nice to have a class that gets a little bit of bonuses on ships and doesn't mainly rotate around them like the other ones can, or water or something. It's just more general class. Let's see, Sea Witch, arcane class with a witchy water theme. For its first 3 levels, it gets 2 uses of bestow. For its first 3 levels, it gets 2 uses of Bestow Curse, which is a spell with will save, or they take 1 of -6 to a stat, -4 to all d20 rolls, or a 50% chance to do nothing on a turn. It's a solid debuff, basically. And Call Maelstrom, which lets you make a whirlpool. The first level loss unlocks its unique summons of deep sea things and the ability to curse boats to go slower and the crew to be worse at their jobs, as well as the ability to produce another whirlpool per day that can exit into an underwater feature like a cavern or something. Second level loss improves the summon ability and gives it another use, as well as unlocking another whirlpool that exits into a random place in the plane of water. And the capstone Call Phantom Ship, which does what it says for the duration of 1 hour per arcane caster level, but it's not once per day or anything, so I don't know. It has to be resummoned twice a day or something. Or you can summon a fleet of ships. This is so unclear. It's whatever DM will let you get away with. Because this is a spell-like ability, which means you just do it as a standard action. I am assuming that that from the language that there is the phantom ship that you summon, and not you can just constantly summon phantom ships every round, as funny as that would be. So this class is fine at sailing heavy campaign, but that's about it. Also, the phantom ship just confuses me, but is really going to be adjudicated by your DM. In all seriousness, you have a ship to sail on. Go nuts, I guess.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah. Stormcaster, and effectively to get into this class, you effectively have to either be a druid. These spells make it kind of obtuse, but you effectively either have to be a druid, a clerk with the storm domain, which will give them both Gust of Wind and Call Lightning as spells they can cast, or an arcane caster class.
I do want to point one thing out before because we're talking about druids. It's
Yeah.
ancillary to this actual class. However, one of the only things worth mentioning that we did pass up in the, how normal classes are affected by things is that druids have the option of taking a dolphin as their animal familiar. Do not ever trust a player or a druid who has a dolphin as a familiar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's your only warning. No, I will not elaborate. Continue, sir.
What's so untrustworthy about dolphins?
Everything.
No. Don't even feign ignorance. You know.
So, in any case,
Go ahead.
All right, so this class loses a spell caster, or loses a spell level for +2 caster level with air, electricity, sonic, and water spells. The ability to give up a spell to do a 30-foot burst that does spell level d6s of sonic damage, and a 1-round stun with a fortitude save that doesn't affect the burst itself doesn't affect you. It's a supernatural ability, which means it doesn't provoke when you use it, so you can't actually use it, hope things fail their save, and just walk into combat if you happen to be, like, cornered or something. Let's see. It gets 10 electricity and sonic resistance. As an immediate action, it can do a 1-round wind wall on themselves that eventually becomes usable 3 times per day. So basically, if you're being shot by arrows, you can, as an immediate action, just say no. Ignores wins for purposes of range attacks and listening, so long as what you're doing is possible. Which you can eventually share with allies. Attach minor amounts of sonic damage and a fort save to avoid being stunned for a round to all of your lightning spells. And once per week, control weather, but only for creating windstorms, thunderstorms, hurricane force winds. And the capstone, Lord of the Storm, which bumps your lightning and sonic resistance up to 30, makes you immune to being thrown around by winds, and gives you a +2 bonus to saves against wind and water spells. So in all of that obtuse paragraph, the class is strong. The reason you're going in here and the strongest feature is the ability to add stun to all of your lightning spells at character level 10. The other abilities have uses too, and this is by no means a bad class. Also, by the way, the DC on Thunderclap is actually who the fuck knows. They did not define the DC in the supernatural ability, and it's not emulating a spell of any sort. So they just forgot to put it there. Well, I'm guessing my best guess, by the way, is the DC of whatever spell you're giving up to use Thunderclap. So I may need to do a proof run pass through this book, but this is a different matter entirely.
Jim isn't getting paid to proofread. Jim is getting paid to make magic.
Apparently.
I'm wondering why Jim is getting paid at all.
We need someone to fill in 8 pages for our naval combat rules.
Do you want to write the naval combat rules for the greatest game of role-playing of all time? No. Sorry. Jim got a little monolithic there.
Yeah. And finally, Wavekeeper. A divine, realistically druid prestige class that gives up a level of spellcasting, a level of animal companion, strangest give up, but sure. And wild shape progression for a swim speed, or faster swim speed if you already have it. All the spells from a sea-related domain added to your class list, as well as its granted power. The ability to, at will, direct a large body of water to lash out at someone within 30 feet for 30 feet of water. Or, yeah, a large body of water to lash out at someone within 30 feet of itself for a d6 per class level non-lethal damage with a reflex save for half, or to just bull rush them. Let's see. The ability to breathe underwater and at the same level, cast water breathing once per day, so you can let someone else breathe underwater. For a little bit at least. The ability to affect the currents of water as an extraordinary ability, meaning that's actually free action. The ability to... yeah, this is something I actually picked up from reading the rules compendium. Apparently, if it's an extraordinary ability and it doesn't list an action type, it's a free action.
What?
Yeah, this is something I did not know, because... Oh. Yeah. Yeah. It hasn't really affected much of what we've said previously, but it is something to just keep in mind. A lot of the bad abilities were supernatural anyways, which means they're still a standard action. Let's see. The ability to at-will change into water elemental that eventually goes up to huge size. Starts as large and then they eventually gain huge. Unlike normal wild shapes, this also gains all of its abilities and feats, but you still retain your creature type, meaning possibly something as the elemental traits are one of the special qualities, so it's really up to the DM whether you're able or immune to critical hits and sneak attack or not. It's not a huge deal, but it is something there. Notably, it's also kind of a minor negative as well. Water Elemental is probably one of the ones where you actually do want to lose one of their special qualities, because one of their special qualities is Water Mastery. So if a water elemental is attacking someone on ground or is on ground itself, it has a -4 to its attack and damage rolls.
Yep.
And the capstone, Call of the Abyss, which allows you to once per day summon an elder water elemental from the deep seas made of black lightless waters. The black lightless waters has no extra effects other than looking cool. This is a good class in a waters-based campaign, and as it doesn't focus on ships or anything like that, so it's a little bit more versatile than like the ship ones, I guess. But it'll have some issues in a more general campaign, as water is very needed for this class, especially with its emphasis on like a water elemental form. Yeah, and that's the prestige classes at least.
All right.
Yeah, nothing terribly all that interesting, quite honestly. Sandstorm had much better prestige classes, and I'd probably say the other two had better prestige classes, and there's only like 4 of them in here as well, so. Yeah, on to skills and feats. And by skills, I mean talking about ship jobs, followed by a lot of pages of skills, 7 to be exact. Some of which I can concede is almost useful, but most of which is just Sylvia overbuilt nonsense as usual. Like, this page pretty much examines it. Like, diving rules. Okay, this is actually nice, good, useful. Like, hey, at what point do they start taking damage from diving? At what point does it not matter that you're jumping into water and are going to basically be doing the equivalent of jumping into concrete for all it matters? Because once you get above a certain height and dive into water, you might as well be hitting a solid surface.
Yep.
On the other hand, the extra breath rolls. I mean, what the fuck? do we need this? You already have.
Yes.
You already have a roll for how long you can hold your breath. We don't need a fucking swim check for more.
You sure?
Yes.
You sure?
All right, so feats. And more
That's
specifically,
the appropriate response.
Yeah, more specifically, feats I care about, and most of the feats I care about are telling you how shit works underwater as much as anything else. So here's Aquatic Shot, which is to partially undo how annoying it is to shoot ranged weapons underwater. So let's start with this normal thing over here. Thrown weapons are not usable underwater. Ranged weapons that go through water normally receive a -2 penalty for every 5 feet of travel. Aquatic bows have a range increment of 10 feet instead. So they can shoot a full 10 feet before they start getting fucked. Yeah, so ranged weapons are largely not usable underwater without this feat. Let's see. This one actually allows you to use throwing. Yeah. This one makes it so throwing weapons can be thrown, but they still suck. Missile weapons, -2 penalty for every 10 feet, so mostly unusable. Aquatic bow is usable. This basically just makes the aquatic bow usable as a short of it. Which is yay, I guess. Expert swimmer, which again goes over the rules for actually holding your breath. Also lets you do it a little bit longer, I guess. And swim a little bit better. Steam magic, which is actually useful if you are actually in a water campaign. Makes it so you don't have to make spellcraft checks to use fire magic underwater, because otherwise it is a very difficult spellcraft check to be able to cast fire magic underwater. Or target water with fire magic. Swag and Flip, which is specifically good if you're going to be doing a lot of underwater stuff, as lets you make a single melee attack followed by a withdraw action. Which is withdraw actions are normally a full round, which is a double move. That doesn't provoke attacks of opportunity, but in this case, it's just be a double move as a move action after you actually made an attack, which is not bad. Sunken Song, that lets bards work underwater, because you can't really make sound underwater normally.
I'm gonna say that is incorrect. You can make sound, and sound actually does travel further. It's just we don't have the actual apparatus or built-in body part to hear sound.
Which makes your bardic music not really work very well.
Yes, no, that is true.
It's also kind of hard to sing underwater, normally.
That is true, but that's more
a water
because of
breather
our
creature.
I can say that's more of our inability to breathe water.
Yeah. And Toothed Blow, which is actually one of the simplest feats in here. It's, yeah, your unarmed strikes can now deal piercing damage as well as bludgeoning. That's it. But this actually has, but again, you look at this further, what's letting you do is actually attack underwater without taking a -2 penalty and dealing half damage, because bludgeoning actually gets hits really screwed when it comes to water. Piercing does full damage. No.
I guess that makes sense.
Yeah. Again, it's 3/5, it's overbuilt nonsense.
Yeah.
Alright. Oh. Ships and equipment.
Boats.
Boats! Boats and boats and boats! They're fine. There's nothing too unexpected or silly here. Here's some boats. Yeah, nothing particularly bad either. It's like, here's some descriptions. Nothing is all that egregious or anything. Here's how much it costs, etc. And boat weapons, like siege weapons, except no, wait, they're just siege weapons, including the same rules that we went over in Hero of Battle, which is actually in the DM's guide technically, and this one just points you to DM's guide rather than reprinting them, which makes enough sense here. It also makes enough sense that Heroes of Battle would actually reprint the rules for siege weaponry, because that is a thing you do there. Although what it should have actually done was update the rules for siege weaponry to make them less fucking obtuse and dumb, but different matter entirely. Let's see. Armor! Including this really expensive option called Living Coral, which costs 16 fucking K for just normal Living Coral. This armor is literally grown on you in order to get it to be the right shape, by the way.
I mean, it makes sense if it's like artisan built just for you.
Yeah.
Nonsense.
It is technically the best medium armor in the game, asterisk, because generally these only add up to 8. This adds up to 9, so you could get the most AC out of it. But at the same time, I can't have Living Coral that's made of mithril, which changes the equation completely.
Yep.
Whereas I could have a mithril breastplate. Aquatic weapons. So, strangely enough, the most notable thing here to go over is this exotic weapon called the aquatic crossbow. Which may actually be worth using at low levels due to how shooting underwater works, even though it... So, if you don't have proficiency, because I'm just going to assume you're not going to be stupid enough to pick up exotic weapon proficiency, aquatic crossbow, that the penalty is a -4 for shooting it. But it does just straight up have a range increment of 40 feet underwater. So you can't just shoot this 40 feet underwater with only a -4 penalty, whereas like all the other ranged weapons were a -2 per 5 feet, and even the aquatic crossbow is a -2 per 10. The first 10 feet is free and a -2 per 10 feet. So yeah, this isn't you can't do, because of how crossbows work, you can't do like incremental attacks with it. So it's not good once you start getting to higher levels because it will drop off fast. But if you're like in the early levels of the game, it's not the worst thing in the world to carry one around, I guess. If you know you're being underwater, it'll be in underwater combat, and you might need a ranged weapon because you're going to be doing nothing else in that round because you're not a spellcaster. Beyond that, nothing terribly interesting. Also, gear. Pretty much what do you expect? It's here. You can have a bicorn or a tricorn hat. They don't do anything special. They're just hats. The air plant was actually kind of interesting because it's a living plant that you can like break off a piece of it, and it's like 5 minutes of breathable air basically by putting it in your mouth. Just kind of cute at the very least. All right, and on to magic and spells. Spells and spells of spells. So air breathing, which is literally the inverse of water breathing for those species that can't normally breathe on land. As just automatically a mass spell, so you can actually touch a bunch of different things with a duration to split between them. Swim, which I'm mostly surprised is in this book and not the player's handbook. I'm actually really surprised a spell called Swim was not in the player's handbook.
Yeah, now that you mention it.
Yeah. Let's see. Blackwater Tentacle. Which is Mostly just amuses me because it just summons a tentacle that attacks things. It does exactly what you think it would do. It's a fixed tentacle, it just lashes out. Detect ship. Which, okay, if you actually are on a boat, this is actually a really good spell, if you have it. If you know you're going to be sailing around, this is basically like you're trading a level 3 spell slot for a class feature because it has a 24-hour duration. But you'll know when you need it, and it basically just lets you detect it detects ships within, let's see, a mile per caster level, which is fairly large.
Yeah.
And then you can concentrate to actually figure out more about the ships. So it's like, in general, it's just a decent spell for very specific campaigns. Beyond that, Megalodon Empowerment, which is notably a buff spell that you... So basically it starts as a normal spell or a normal spell that like adds survival checks, increased swim speed, etc. But sometime during the duration, you can just spend a standard action, it just becomes a melee buff. It's notable because it's a druid spell that specifically is usable to buff their wild shaped form and give it like extra natural weapons and stuff as well. So, you know, it's just kind of and is kind of akin to Tensor's transformation in the sense that it just gives them a good attack bonus, but they can't cast spells as well as the other bonuses it has, higher natural armor bonus, etc, etc. So it's kind of neat. And Mordenkainen's capable caravel. You summon a boat. You just summon a fucking boat. For duration of a day per 2 levels, you could just also recast this, by the way, every day for all it fucking matters.
Hold on. Let's see. Is there anything that stops you from summoning that ship directly over another ship? Like 15 feet off the deck of another ship?
Range, ship plus extra. Okay, yes, the range itself.
Okay.
Now, mind you, if you're on the ship, you should be able to do that, no problem.
Yeah, because just the image of somebody pulling up next to your ship and like, now we were going to plunder you. With what ship? Yours? Or mine? Bam! Summon another ship. Crush them.
The other thing that will keep you from doing that is as a cast time of 10 minutes.
Oh. Hey, you could time it. You could... Hey, a cool DM would let you try. That's all I'm saying.
I mean, I wouldn't be opposed to letting you try and fucking summon a ship on top of a different ship. There would definitely be some skill checks involved here. Also, this is like a level 8 spell, so I'm pretty sure you could do much more ridiculous things than summon a ship on top of another ship, actually.
I refuse to believe there's not some kind of concoction of feats, weird classes and whatnot that would let you shave down that time to be able to perform boatmancy.
Almost certainly. I'm not going to go hunting for it, but there's probably some way to get this down to like a standard action or something.
If we ever do a pirate campaign, I've got a new character now.
Mine is like level 15 at minimum before you can even cast a spell, so there's that.
Don't rain on my dreams, Vince.
Let's see. Doom of the Seas, which is summon the Kraken. I don't think I have to say more about this spell than it summons a Kraken.
The Kraken.
Notably, a fiendish Kraken, where they thought of actually putting the entirety of the stats here, so I actually thank them for that. Especially since it's in the newer format where you can actually fucking tell what this thing can do, as opposed to the monster manual. Let's see. Beyond that, epic spells and psionics. Here's the epic spell, or here's a couple of the extra spells if you really want to read through them. I'm not going to. Psionics, there wasn't terribly much all that interesting, because it's like, Yeah, boat stuff. Not really that interesting. Waterborne, I think, was the notable exception because, let's see, gain the aquatic subtype, swim speed, breathe underwater, basically, for 5 power points, less than an hour per level. So it's actually, if you know you're doing a water campaign, this is just solid for a scion or well, an egoist specifically, or a psychic warrior. The augment isn't bad either. Yeah, the augment makes you immune to pressure damage, so. Thus, you could just let yourself sink to the bottom of the ocean for reasons. This is probably not a good idea, but you could. Alright.
When has that stopped us?
Yeah. New magic items. So, let's see. As far as special materials are concerned, Riverine is interesting, but actually bad. Basically, it's material made from water under high pressure, from the elemental plane of water, so it's a magic material. Don't think about it too much. The most notable thing about it is it converts half the armor bonus into a deflection bonus. Which...
Doesn't that make shields bad?
It kind of... Okay, so the problem is a deflection bonus won't stack with the deflection bonus you get from a ring of deflection. So it's kind of a trap there in the sense that you're not going to gain as high an AC bonus from your actual AC. And your ring, if you were going to take a ring deflectionist, and it's now effectively useless. Now like, you could argue that would kind of save you money, because the only thing about it is a deflection bonus applies to touch attacks, whereas normal armor bonus doesn't.
Yep.
But
also, shields give a shield bonus to AC, not a deflection bonus.
Like, yeah, they give their shield bonus to AC, and the armor gives an armor bonus to AC, etc. But
fair enough.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I thought he was asking because of he thought shields gave a deflection bonus. It's like, no, they're their own category.
Shield bonus. Yeah, they're their own category. They also don't apply
you are
to touch
correct.
attacks.
You're correct in the reason I was asking.
Yeah.
Yay.
Let's see. Also, beyond that, for Magic Armor and Shield, Guild is actually a cheapish solution for mid-level campaigns for water breathing characters specifically, because they can just pay like 7.5k, and now their armor lets them breathe on land. You don't have to worry about it. Corrosive is here as well, and the acidic burst that goes with it. They appeared in DM's Guide 2 technically earlier, but it's nice to see it in a different book that doesn't waste 4 times the amount of space on the same magic item enhancements. And Aquatic is legit good for a spare weapon, because this just straight up gives that weapon specifically freedom of movement in water. So you know all those rules about attacking things in water? Yeah, you get to fucking ignore them. You can just swing your weapon normally and we can ignore this crap. Beyond that, Living Figurehead is actually fucking amusing when it comes to the wondrous magic items.
Oh, you get to do the King of Red Lions thing.
Yep.
You're not my dad, boat dad.
Yes.
Notably, the only introvert here is the Dragon Head, but still. And let's see. On to Chapter 7. Monsters!
Monsters.
Arguably
the most valuable part of this book.
Yeah. Unfortunately, Shiv has not joined us yet, because I'd like to point out that this is the only template here. This is amphibious creatures, and of course the example creature for our template is an amphibious Medusa.
Amazing.
Continuing their tradition of using Medusas as all the example creatures.
Hey, that's a JoJo's reference. Stone Ocean.
Haha.
I make no apologies.
Yeah.
You should.
Hey, it's fine, it's fine. But beyond that, the template's actually not bad. Let's see. Literally just gain the aquatic subtype, gain a swim speed, equal to half their normal land speed, retaining all their qualities, etc., etc. This is at a cost of -2 dex, and there's no level adjustment.
Interesting.
Yeah, so it's just a good template for this is a template I would just basically offer to every single martial character in Aquatic campaign, just to like, because yeah, -2 dex in order to operate in water well is not bad at all. Oh, and amphibious, so they breathe air and water equally. That technically comes with the aquatic subtype, anyways. But yeah. Beyond that, we have. So they continue to put the races that we already described earlier in the book in the monster section, but at the very least here they gave them fucking class levels, so there's that, I guess. Monsters crabs of pretty much every size, but no picture for them, which annoys me.
I mean, take a crab and blow it up in Photoshop. Ain't that big of an issue with this one. Like, any other one, sure, I'd give you this, but like,
I know, but it's no, it's monstrous crab, which granted is not dire crab, so they don't have to put spikes on it or something, but
yeah, I was gonna say even monstrous. Put some spikes on it. Give it a little frowny eyebrows. Put a top hat on it, like the mud crabs.
Beyond that, let's see. Dinosaurs are what you would expect. They're aquatic dinosaurs, so here's a plesiosaur.
A plesiosaur? What about Leoprodon?
That's a good question.
Wasn't as popular back then.
Not even a magical Leoprodon.
I'm surprised they have a mosasaur.
Oh, so it predates
Most people
that
didn't even know
reference.
that thing existed.
I'm doing a bit. I'm sorry.
Yeah, there's no Leo player. That thing. Also dire animals, which I think I see up. Yes, because I think there's two things. It's like dire barracuda and dire something else. It wasn't anything interesting. Here's a coral golem, which at the very least is a interesting concept for a golem.
Yeah, see, that looks cool.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
What do we got? Yeah. What do we got at the bottom of the ocean? We can just make a golem. Well, how about all these fucking coral? Yeah, good thinking, Jim.
Of how expensive living coral armor is, it's like.
No, okay. Legitimately, I understand why it's so expensive. You're not paying for the coral.
No, you're not. You're paying for
time.
Slow growing and the artisanry. It's like if someone showed up in like perfectly carved like Melania armor or some shit like that in Dark Souls. It's like the materials for it probably not that expensive. The time and care and like all the lion pauldrons and whatnot, that was an expensive piece of art.
Let's see. So this lobster thing caused trauma to everyone who's played Elden Ring.
Lobsters.
Watch it, it's going to snipe you from halfway across the map. The hippocampus, which is a seahorse, and I will point out, this is an alternate mount for the paladin, if they want it, in an aquatic campaign. If you want to ride a seahorse. On the other hand, you're going to have that song in your head all fucking day.
Shooby-doo, shoot-shooby-doo.
The King of Atlantis is not Shooby-Doo.
Sure about that?
Yep. Nerds are in here. Nerds are in here.
Okay.
I mean, that's not surprising.
Silence, which is it's literally just a race of Silia. This is the thing that was on the cover, by the way, from the Odyssey. It's well, we decided that this should just be a race.
But Scylla has a cost.
Let's see. Yes. The only evil, the only evil outsider in this book was a Yugoloth named the Sinaloth, or Sinaloth. It is also notable as the only thing in here that doesn't have a swim speed. This, yeah, these things.
Well, okay. I can see the logic on that one because if these are supposed to be like very thinly veiled stand-ins for, you know, Yog-Sothoth and whatnot, they were in a city and then that city got sunk.
Yeah.
The Atlanteans adapted, but these guys, they were all asleep. I'm on Jim's wavelength. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. Send help.
Probably a bad thing.
More the point, they're supposed to be like deep dwelling terrors, give or take, as they're also like immune to pressure and can breathe water, but they don't actually swim, so they just kind of bounce along the bottom. Basically, terrifying things from the abyss type of deal. The aquatic abyss, not the infinite layers of the abyss. But yeah.
We getcha.
Yep. And animals, which are exactly what you think they are. And finally, let's see. Oh yeah, new creatures and summoning spells. So here's more new summon stuff, which is more appropriate for water stuff, including that Yugoloth. And recommended things to replace them with. Just because, the summon monsters and summon nature ally need to be more powerful or something, I don't know. And finally, adventure locales. Basically just various things to throw into setting campaigns. So like, here's a ship, here's a nice isle, or a unique and interesting looking isle thing.
A spooky cove, yeah.
Yep. Here's this dragon turtle being an asshole.
Oh, hey, look at them. Shit, we know all about dragon.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. All right.
Map of that island, etc.
Next time that bastard's getting some good nuggies, and that's all he's getting.
Let's see. And appendix, encounter tables. Also, here's some just basic encounter patrols and such for a few things. And encounter table is proper, and by encounter table is proper, I mean it starts on this page and ends on that page, so a lot of encounter tables.
It's a lot of encounter tables.
Yeah, they like their encounter tables. I'll give them that. And the back corner of this book. Or back cover of this book. Also back corner of this book. It's like right there. There's the back corner. Yep. Alright. Yep, there's a book. This is exactly what it says on the tin.
It is, in fact, a book.
It is a deeply flawed book.
It is, kind of. It's not horrible by any means. It's what I kind of expect from the book, but it doesn't really go out of its way in any respect. And, like, beyond the setting itself, it doesn't really offer much.
Yeah. Also, I say it's deeply flawed. It's mostly a... Yeah, the naval combat's got some really weird shit to it, and their decision for the effects of certain spells, some of the decisions are pretty baffling.
They are, but that's like a couple pages of the book, and you can massage that.
I was mostly milking it for a bit,
yeah.
But it's truly minor, and again, a DM's going to pick and choose little pieces out of this book and come up with the rest on their own 9 times out of 10. So some character of his goes, I'm going to flame strike the deck and try and start a fire. No real, cool DM is going to be like, no, that does not create fire on a ship.
Most DMs aren't going to open up this book, flip to that page and go, does flame strike start a fire? No, the book says it doesn't. Now most of them go, I mean, it's half fire.
Yeah. A valiant effort with a couple of nice templates to use for a specific environment, C+.
Yeah, basically.
I'd say C- personally, but
I'm not that harsh on it. It's I don't know if it's the worst of the it is the worst of terrain books. It is definitely the worst of the terrain books, but it has the advantage of being a more usable terrain, give or take.
It isn't the book we had last week, which is a solid F-.
Yeah,
that wasn't a terrain book though.
That wasn't a terrain book, though.
I know. I'm just saying, like, in books in general.
Yeah, but that's its own special case, and we could talk about that later when we do tier lists again. But yeah, as far as like what I actually want out of terrain book, this delivers barely. That's about the best I can say out of it. It's like, there's nothing interesting really going on in the feat section. It is very much just related to water stuff. There's nothing interesting going on in the, there's not too much interesting going on in the prestige classes. They're okay, but I think there's like one that out of its element really is anything you would contemplate playing, and the rest were like, are you really focused on ships, or are you being underwater a lot, or... If not, then yeah. Any of the one that's like more generic, the Leviathan Hunter, still has its very specific focus of fighting Abba, and that's about it.
I love that I've got two different interpretations for ABBA when you say it.
Two different
ABBA, the
interpret-
music group, and then ABBA, the Guilty Gear character.
Ah.
Both of which are perfectly valid.
Is the Guilty Gear character a dancing queen?
She fights with a
Not
giant key.
particularly.
Okay. But yeah, any other thoughts on this?
Not particularly.
I
Yeah.
think we've said our piece.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
Okay, so sorry.
no, go
Close
ahead.
thoughts on that.
Yeah.
Nothing about the book itself.
Okay. But yeah, that's pretty much all my thoughts on it too. It's kind of honestly more bare bones than the other two, at least from what I remember. Yeah, no, it's more bare bones than the other two. I could get more out of Frostburn definitely than this one. Yeah, it's something you're going to encounter more than Frostburn or than the Frostvale, because you run into stuff like, you know, rivers and shores and etc. when just moving through geography. It's just going to happen. Bodies of water are things, but it doesn't really. What it mostly elaborates on really is just the sea and sea travel and stuff like that, which is fine to have.
Not enough
but-
hard fluff to give you like a pre-built adventure or something like that. It's just kind of water. Is this anything?
Yeah.
And
It does have some encounter
feel-
locales in the back, in fairness, but the other two books have stuff like that as well.
I feel like it's more a book for people who've decided they want to do a water campaign and have already built all of the stuff they want for it and are just looking for some kind of mechanical tools.
Yeah, and
even then, I wouldn't recommend them taking every mechanical tool from this book.
no, but it does have some ideas to mine here. There are actual decent ideas there. The skills section, I, as a tradition, don't go into granular detail on, because oh god, is that especially boring even for what it could be. But it's just like it's equal kind of parts good and bad, in the sense that, like, again, there are some ideas like, okay, what happens when you hit water from a certain height? Here's just a decent way of adjudicating that. Okay, that's fine. And various extra things that just really don't need to be there, or you would already use the skill for and not really worry about it and just let the DM set something as a DC. So it kind of goes back and forth. But yeah, it is very focused on what it does, and it doesn't really go too far outside of those boundaries, which is kind of what what made, like, just Frostburn and Sandstorm just better. Was I can at least take these things outside of a waste campaign or outside of the waste, and they don't feel like suddenly all their features turn off. They like, these feats do something outside of, like, the conditions they're specifically set for, and these prestige classes work outside of the places they're specifically supposed to be. Like, there's not much here that does that. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
I think that about sums everything up here for us. So, under normal circumstances, this would be the point where we pivot over to our other game on Thursdays, which is Warhammer 40,000 Chaos Gate Demon Hunters. However, there are three things to consider. Number one, we are still one host down for the night. Number two, it is already 10:45, so we wouldn't be getting much done in Chaos Gate Demon Hunters anyway.
Yeah.
And third, is it possible, Vince, that you have another book prepared for our viewing pleasure that is not the one you wanted Shiv to be here for?
No, I'm not that far ahead anymore, unfortunately.
Understood. So I think then, given the fact that I've had a pretty long day, I was not originally planning to do this, but given the fact that I've had a pretty long day and the fact that we're not going to get much done in Chaos Gate Demon Hunters anyway, I think we are going to leave it here for our stream tonight.
Yeah. Right.
And have some free time.
Right. Cool. So going into the outro stuff. So join us here on Sunday for more Super Robot Wars 30, where we're still in the middle of side mission land, but yeah, we'll probably continue to be there for a while. Join us here on Monday for Digimon Stories, Cyber Sleuth, Hacker's Memory.
Hacker's Memory.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
Where we have done some grinding off stream. This is actually going to be a shorter stream, our Monday streams, than the previous Hacker's Memory was, or previous Cyber Sleuth, just because A, it's a shorter game in general, and B, because now that we've seen everything, and especially because we pull our Digimon data forward from our save from Cyber Sleuth, we are just going for the Digimon we want, and we're not meandering across the Digivolution list.
Yeah.
So it's probably not going to be super short, but it's going to be shorter.
That's good, at least. Yeah, and join us back here next week on Thursday for when we go over Magic of Incarnum. A book where we will have words and words and words. Getting into the magical lands of, man, do I have to describe things to you guys? Not to Shiv, but to you two specifically.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. But yeah. Till then, everyone. Remember, hindsight's 2020. Although you couldn't hear me say that because you're underwater.